All right, so this whole Epstein list that's coming out, if you haven't heard in the news, this whole unsealing of court documents, all of this has been leaked and people are commenting left and right. So I want to make some comments myself. And more importantly, I want to give you the example, or use this example rather, to illustrate the movement that we are in right now. It's not this, oh, I'm a conspiracy nut job, this crazy guy. It's the exposure of what has been hidden. God has told us and shown many of us that this is a season of exposure. Those that have been acting wickedly, whether in the church or whether in the political, the social, whatever realm, corporate realm, medical realm, whatever it is, all of this is coming out. And so we're seeing this play out. And more importantly, it's a movement of waking people up. I've talked about 3 different audiences. I've dissected so many different topics. And we are at a point, and I'll illustrate this here in a second, where you have to be smarter. You cannot be looking at news in a linear way and not understanding psyops, psychological warfare, not understanding all of the different sort of tools that are being used by whether it's the left and right or whatever it is to push a certain agenda, to make you to think a certain way, all that stuff. Get rid of that and start to think deeper. Start to question everything and start to be in a critical thinking mindset. So this is what's happening, guys. And so I want to give a couple of points that you should be aware of. I'm not here to make the same commentary that everybody else is, but rather to, again, illustrate to you how you should be thinking at a big picture, higher level position, so that when you see information, you're not just bombarded with what you think are facts or lies and all of this psychological warfare. So when you're receiving news about this Epstein list, what do you do, right? The first thing you've got to ask yourself as the court docs, as the Epstein list comes out is it a distraction from something else? Every time bombshell information comes out, you ask yourself, is this a distraction from something else? Now, a lot of people have been joking, this is a distraction from the distraction, or is it vice versa? Because this is such a critical thing that people have been waiting on. And a lot of us knew about this. Many of us have already researched, we've been told this. There even has been news anchors that have come out and publicly said they've had the scoop, they had the down low, but they were not allowed to say it, or rather they said it and then they got in trouble. And so all of this conspiracy, you are some crazy right wing, all that stuff, look at what's happening. What stuff has Trump said? What stuff has all these people have said that has turned out to be wrong? People say the difference between conspiracy reality and conspiracy theory is a delta of like 6 months or a year or even months now for that matter, because information is coming out so quickly. Now, again, back to the point, ask yourself, is this a distraction from something else? Because I see this being legitimate, but also other things, whether it's Sam Bankman-Fried, the trial, the Obama Foundation, many things are happening now that coincide with the timing of all of this. And so be very careful, right? And so I'm going to get back to this here in a second. But the next thing you have to realize and ask yourself as you're navigating this process is who's controlling the narrative. Every time information comes out, and let me give you a couple of things that's always happening. People are, and I have a handwritten road there, drawn road. People are always twisting it left and right. You're being gaslit. There's selective storytelling, selective hearing. There's illogical fallacies galore coming out. The appeal to the emotion, right? Framing, narrative framing, a certain repetition that's coming out, whether it's from the good side or the bad side, diversion, redirection. So all these psychological warfare tactics, they're focusing in on certain people, highlighting certain people. They're making memes to distract you. Stephen Hawking, right? A lot of memes coming out about him and him being on the list and what he's doing. And just people are making fun of it. They're distracting you. They're making it lighthearted. There's other people that are focusing in on Trump. And of course, there's a lot of misrepresentation there in terms of how you look at this, because he wasn't on the island. He didn't participate in any of the stuff. But then look at what Clinton, right? Bill Clinton has said. He likes them young, and yet people are giving him a free pass. They're showing him grace in that regard. They're not covering it. And you have to go to other quote unquote alternative sites to see that kind of news. You Google any of these things, you can see what they're doing with regards to censorship, with selective storytelling, highlighting certain things, and all of the other things that are going on. So be aware. of these tactics and what's happening, any news, whether it's Epstein or anything else, if you've woken up this far, right? If you're audience 3 or even now audience 2, in a sense, you know what's happening and you're attentive and aware of these tactics. Now, other people, whether you're an audience 1 or you're an audience 2 even, you are navigating and coping with this truth. Everybody gets there. Everybody questions things. Everybody has this self-realization moment. You're going through certain logical thinking processes, the Socratic method, Hegelian dialectic, right? So people looking at two sides and looking to see what the argument is on both sides and then coming to a conclusion. There's people just even on the bandwagon, right? Bandwagon effect. You have people that are information overload, oversimplification, confirmation bias, exploitation. You got many different tactics, ways that people are coping with the truth and navigating through this, whether you're being handheld through it or you have to do your own research and then questioning, oh, wow, those conspiracy crazy people, I guess they were right. Or Q and these guys, they were telling us about this. I guess they were right. Is this true or is this not true? So let me wrestle with this and even questioning. And it's good to question even the court documents and saying what is authentic, what is not, and what is happening really behind closed doors. So all of this sort of navigating through reality is getting people to this realization of truth. And once you're there, you cannot go back. You can't go back to sleep, right? And so the other thing I want to mention quickly is that you gotta navigate the parallel stories and the realities and all the other news that's happening. Don't be too distracted, right? A lot of people talking about Miami, what's going on, and possibly some sightings of certain things. And again, I'm not going to get deep into that, as well as other financial stuff, the impending collapse of the banks and JP Morgan and just many different other topics that are happening, coinciding with this obvious, bombshell. But truth be told, no pun intended, you have to be awake to understand all of these things and how it's affecting you, because we are in a psychological war. And so this is what's happening. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is that everybody's on a different curve. This is a typical innovation adoption life cycle. I've always said this. Now, I've also said it in a way where you group 3 different audiences. But the truth seeker adoption curve that's happening right now is that you have the bleeding edge people, the innovators, the early adopters. They're always telling you things and giving you information. They're researching. Then you have the rest coming on, the early majority. Then you have the late majority. Then you have the laggards. And some of these laggards may not even ever embrace the truth. The fact that there's a globalist agenda, that there's a pedo, and I'm not going to say the whole thing, there's child whatever, right? Traffic, whatever it is. All these different things that are happening. And the truth and the reality behind satanic Luciferian worship, all of these things are real and it's happening. Yet people don't want to believe it. 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, 3 years ago, people would have thought you were crazy. You were absolutely a nut job because you think and you believe in this stuff. And so this scale of reality, or rather the scale of awakening, this perception of reality is what I call it. This is how news is getting disseminated these days, guys. You always have the early adopters, the bleeding edge guys, which is, it's ironic, but in reverse, you have the audience 3 or even audience 2 people that have been awakened or enlightened. Talked about this in a different video, but with the Epstein List, wherever you are at, right? Whether it's just bringing awareness, whether it's the details now that's coming out, whether it's other, things like the suicide, the question of that. Every time you have people come bring the story up, you will have people that in an early period, you see here 2018, 2019, 2020, they talk about it, but yet they say, oh, those guys are conspiracy theorists. Oh, those guys are crazy, conservative, something, whatever. But as more news comes out, as time passes, God allows the wheat from the chaff to be shown and to be shaken so that you can see what's what. You can see the gold, you can see the dirt, you can see all of the things, because as time passes, you will see what is the truth. And so this is where we are at, right? So 2024, 2023, you have the regular people. They're all waking up. The normal, the audience 1, the normalized phase. I've talked about this again before. All these people are telling the next level. And then you start the cycle over for the quote unquote next conspiracy or the next news topic. You have the early adopters, the bleeding edge people come in, talk about it, research it, disseminate the information, and then they'll go and tell the other people. And so the stuff that's very loud, whether it's on the cue boards, whether it's Trump saying it, again, Trump, it's a big hint, right? The credibility you have when you say certain things and it happens. He's been crying wolf about many things. The 2024, be careful of the immigrants coming in because they're going to use them to start voting. There's many different things, narratives being put out there, being foreshadowed in a sense, because whether it's the intelligence, whether it's just their plan, the deep state plan, and people have a hold of the playbook, whatever it is, they know and they're telling you, right? And people that are researching, they're telling you. And yet, because there's such a gap, there's such a cognitive dissonance, going back to psychological warfare, you don't know, you refuse to believe it, you reject hypotheses and things like that, and you're so utterly delusional in the ways that you want to think and the way that you want to perceive your reality that you don't want to navigate and investigate these things. So this is what's happening, guys, and this is why a lot of people, once it just really hits you in your face, then you will see. But here's a crazy thing. This is not even the beginning of it. The real stuff, the pics, the videos, the details behind that, this is just the list, guys. What happens when you see the list of details, what they did to this person or that person, the crimes against humanity that they actually committed? Once we see some degree of that, what's going to happen? The world is going to go crazy if they decide to accept this as truth. And so, again, I want to give you this quick framework, this perspective, and just let you know that as we move into more things, as we move into 2024, it is absolutely going to be crazy because there's so much that needs to be exposed. There's so much that needs to be disseminated and accepted as people navigate through these times, because it's not just about justice. It's not just about taking all the bad guys down and getting, what they deserve and all that stuff, but rather to wake you up so that the continuity of society proceeds such that we are on the same page for the most part, and we can allow whatever it is that God has in store for us going into the kingdom age to be a good one, because great things are to come, guys. And yes, it's tough. Yes, it's a bit of a rough patch, but we have to get through this. So good things are coming, but be careful. Be careful how you're discerning the times right now and what information and what news is coming out. Love you guys. Exciting times. Talk to you guys very soon.